Hi everyone, it's me Darlene. I am here with a very random video. I wanted to record something. It's the last day of the year. It is, right? Yes, it is. I have to check to make sure because every day is the same to me. But tonight, for many, it's different. A lot of people will be out getting wasted like I would have been once upon a time. And then tomorrow they'll be making New Year's resolutions, and one of them might be that they want to quit drinking because they're so hungover. I used to be so hungover that I just wished I could just die. I mean, there was just no recovery possible in my mind. But sure enough, later that day, I'd be back to drinking. Amazing how that happens. All right, so you can tell by the thumbnail that I'm going to be just talking about AA. I have a lot of friends on Facebook. When I look at my news feed, I don't know, is that what it's called? Sometimes I'll scroll through. I'm reading posts from people I don't know at all. I mean, I know a handful of the people who are my actual friends on Facebook, relatives, things like that. Lots of strangers, and I'm sometimes fascinated by the things that I read, and it'll get me to thinking about things. And one of the things that I noticed quite often is even if somebody is saying, I just celebrated 1 month of sobriety or 1 year of sobriety, others, maybe they also had problems and maybe they were also sober, or maybe they've never had an issue. But some people will say, oh, you really should go to AA, and I stop and think and I say, if that person is doing okay right now with whatever they're doing, why throw something in there to make them feel in the way like maybe they're not doing enough? Maybe they're not going to AA, and maybe that's going to make them feel like, shit, I'm going to just fall off the wagon because I'm not doing that. I don't know. I guess here's the deal. I never went to AA. I have been to some AA meetings. I don't think I ever went to an AA meeting on my own. I mean, is it possible? Is it possible that I did that once upon a time as an attempt to quit? I think I would remember that. I probably would have gone there drunk because it would have been a weird thing. But I went to some AA meetings when my husband was told by his work that he needed to get into treatment for alcohol. They piss tested him one morning because he smelled like booze, but he didn't drink. He slept. He tested negative for alcohol or whatever, for anything. He tested negative, but they still said they wanted him to go to treatment because I guess they could tell he had a problem. I mean, he was a walking stick, and it was getting close to not the end of his life at that point, but he had been drinking for a long time, and he drank every single day. And so they wanted him to go to treatment, and he had to go to AA meetings as part of that. And so I went to some with him, and I was completely sober. When he was told he had to go to treatment, I remember drinking a beer, talking to my brother, and my brother's like, wait a minute, a brother who is sober. He said, Andy is supposed to go to treatment and stop drinking, but you're drinking there next to him? You can't do that. He has no chance. And I said, you're right. While I was on the phone, I poured my beer out and whatever others that I had in the house, and I didn't touch it for 8 months. And then I had drinks every now and then. I've told this story before, but that is the day my life changed. I never went back to any kind of daily drinking, but it has been years that I haven't had even anything. Like the last year that I drank, I had 2 drinks at a restaurant, and then 1.5 or 2.5 beers. I can't remember, but I know there was a half of one and I was done. So that last year, I only had 2 times, period, that I drank anything. And I was very fortunate that it just didn't make me go all out and just drink again. But, that doesn't work for everybody. It worked for me, but I still say that day that I dumped those beers into the sink in Texas, in the apartment, I will never forget it. I was facing south. I just couldn't believe I had done it, and I knew that it was over for me. It wasn't over for my husband. He continued to drink himself to death. But I didn't, and it's very hot in here. I should have my fan on. So anyway, let's get back to AA. When I went to the AA meetings with him, that was during the 8 months that I didn't even sniff a bottle cap. He was still sneaking drinking. He would go for a ride, and I knew when he came back that he had been drinking, and I knew how hard it was because I wanted to quit drinking the last 10 years that I was drinking, and then I just kind of gave up on even trying to quit. That's when I decided to be with Andy, an alcoholic man that I thought, we've got that in common, And I did love him because I met him when I was 14 and I fell in love with him that time I saw him in Houston. And I couldn't believe that I was going to, be with this man that I met when I was 14. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Let's get back to the booze and the AA meetings. When I went to the AA meetings with him, I left there wanting to drink so bad. It just made me crave it, hearing everybody talking about drinking, their drinking stories. The other thing I didn't like is that everybody was so forgiving. And please, if you go to AA, I am not trashing AA. I will not trash anything that helps anybody to stop drinking. But what I noticed there were a lot of people, and this was big. We're in Houston. This was a big meeting. There were a lot of people who would have 1 day of sobriety, and the next week they'd have 1 day of sobriety. They just were drinking still, but they would go in and say, I have 1 day, and everybody would applaud. And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm insulting anyone, but to me it felt like a place to go to constantly be forgiven and accepted for being a drunk. It's I don't know. Like I said, it just wasn't for me. That I didn't like, and I absolutely hated that I wanted to drink when I left there. So that's why I never went to AA. And that's why when people suggest it to someone, I always wonder, do people really stop to think? Anything we say to someone can be taken a completely different way than you would even imagine. You might not even think that it would go there to someone else. This is why I always say, why do people give advice unless they're flat out asked? And even people who ask for advice, especially on Facebook, they don't want advice. They just want to start something. They want people to say something so that they in turn can say, no, I wouldn't do it that way, or no, I wouldn't do that. Or they'll have people say, this is what I would do, and they're like, yes, that's what I wanted to do. They already have it in their head what they want to do. They just want to put it out there. I don't know. But AA meetings, it just wasn't for me. And if somebody would ever ask me, what can I do to stop drinking? I would probably give them a list, First, get rid of all the booze in your house. If you think you'd like AA, go to AA. If you think you'd like this, try this. I would just throw it all out there. I think anybody should do anything and everything they can to stop drinking if that's what they want to do. And if people, are in a position where they don't really think they have a problem, ask others. Do you think I have a problem? They'll tell you. Believe them. And if you think you have a problem, go to your children or your siblings, anybody who loves you, that you love, your best friend, whatever, and tell them, I put booze before you. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to say because I can't help it or because I want to. We all drink for different reasons. I drank because I really didn't know any other way. I wanted to drink. I needed it. And it did come before anything to me, anything. The booze was going to be first. Until that day that I poured beer down the sink. And I always wonder, was it really because I was helping Andy, or was I in a position now where I also really was ready to quit drinking? Because two alcoholics living together, that was a lot of drinking. We didn't argue or anything. We just both loved to drink. And I knew this is not a marriage like the one that I would have wanted. I knew we could have things. We could, go on vacations. We could have done those things, but we couldn't if we were going to be drunks. So I liked the idea of getting sober. Also, I was away from my mother. Still had that same relationship with her. We talked on the phone almost every single day. I would fly to Maine. I lived in Houston for 3 years. I would fly to Maine every 3 months and spend an entire month there taking care of things for my mother and father. And then we ended up moving there because my dad was sick. And Andy said, "You want to go?" And I said, "Yes." And I went there thinking it's going to be so awesome now because I'm a sober daughter and my mother is going to be able to see that. That changed nothing. It only made me wake up to start to realize the issues with my mother had nothing to do with me. She wanted to destroy me even as a sober person. It didn't matter to her at all that I had gotten sober. In fact, I think she didn't like it because now I was not the train wreck that she liked me to be. So there's all of that too. But back to AA, do it if you feel like doing it. If you're advising somebody to do it because it worked for you, make sure they want to know that. Because you never know. They could go there and then say, "I'm getting drunk as soon as I leave here." Another time that I used to want to drink, if I had, I know what it's called, the laughing gas at the dentist. I don't know if any dentists still use that. But when I was in Houston, sober, I think it was when I had a root canal or something. Anyway, I had the laughing gas. All I could do is think about when I'm leaving here, I am getting drunk. It's all I wanted. And after it wore off a little bit, before they let me drive, that feeling was over, thank goodness. Because I was planning on hitting the liquor store and I didn't care. So, it's just different. And I was 39 when I stopped. And I had a lot of years of drinking because I was an alcoholic by 12. My first memory of getting drunk on my own, I was 10. And my mother was aware of it. I was at a wedding and relatives even said, "She's drunk, she's been drinking all the wine." And my mother just blew it off like, "Yeah, that's what she's like." It was just, oh my God. Okay, you guys, I don't know if this helped anybody. If it did, great. If it didn't, sorry. You'll find your own way if you really want to. You really will. I didn't think I could ever quit drinking. I just could not believe that 10 years of trying it and I was never getting there. So I just gave up. I'm just going to go move with an alcoholic and not have my family watch me just drink myself to death. That's what I had chosen. That's what I had decided to do. And by doing that, I somehow ended up getting sober. So you just never know. Thank you so much for watching. Be careful if you're seeing this on New Year's Eve. And I'll be back with more soon. Bye.